Tuesday, back at it. Another edition of Bishop on Air. Thanks so much for hanging out and being part of the program each and every weekday morning, where I hope to inform you of what's coming up and what you could not hear elsewhere. So plenty to get to this morning. The Illinois General Assembly is in session. At least the House is. They're going to be back in Springfield this afternoon. But Senate Republicans are going to be holding a news conference to talk about one thing we're going to focus on, and that's the Prisoner Review Board. After comments from Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday, I talked with State Senator Jason Plummer and got his reaction, so we'll review some of that. We'll also talk with William J. Kelly, the reporter out of Chicago, about the outcome of the Democratic primary for Cook County State's Attorney and another violent weekend, while the Chicago City Council seems to focus on a protest a Chicago alderman had behind a burnt American flag and in front of a revolutionary group that's calling for chaos ahead of the Democratic National Convention. So we'll talk on that as well. But one thing we also got to delve into is FOID card numbers are up, while the state of Illinois is the most background-checked state in the nation in 2023. So we'll review some of that as well. If you follow me on X, you already have a little bit of a glimpse of what we're going to be talking about today. So appreciate you guys following me there. And you can see the stories that we put together at thecentersquare.com for Illinois. And we'll cover some of this and more. So stay tuned here with Bishop on Air. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out again. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we've got plenty to tackle here with Bishop on Air. So we'll talk about the latest in gun legislation and the latest numbers that are kind of revealing about the state of gun control in Illinois. So stay tuned. That's next here with Bishop on Air. Illinois has the most background checks of any other state in the entirety of 2023, as more Illinoisans are now filing for FOID cards and getting those FOID cards, with Illinois State Police updating those FOID card numbers. Welcome back, Bishop on Air. With you, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning. So go check out the headline at thecentersquare.com. Legislation would require third background check and mandatory training for gun purchases. And again, you can find that at thecentersquare.com/Illinois. Last week, the Illinois State Police did update their FOID card numbers. And if you look at the FOID statistics website, you'll see that indeed Illinois State Police updated those FOID card numbers in total. Now 2,473,655. Again, 2,473,655 individuals have FOID cards in the state of Illinois. Now, last week, when they updated those numbers, they still did not update the latest gun ban registration numbers, which the last numbers we have are from January 31st. But one of the things that people have been saying is they haven't updated those FOID card numbers. Well, they did update those FOID card numbers last week, so about 60,000 more FOID card holders in Illinois than the months prior, where they hadn't updated those numbers for quite some time. But it's not the only numbers that are interesting. In a story about House Bill 3239 from State Representative Maura Hirschauer, a Democrat from Batavia, that would essentially say that if you're going to buy a gun, you have to not only go through a background check at the firearms dealer, you also have to get permission from local police and take state-sanctioned training. So multiple layers there. Now, the measure could come up sometime this year. However, the sponsor of the bill, Maura Hirschauer's office, told the Center Square that they are not going to be calling the bill this week. But regardless, all of these background checks that this bill would lay out made me think, well, how many background checks do Illinoisans already go through? And when you look at those numbers, you see that Illinoisans are already some of the most background checked individuals in the country. Data from the Bureau of Investigations, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, has some interesting numbers here. It shows that 248,767 background checks were done in February for the state of Illinois. Most of those were in the category of permit rechecks. 163,355. Now, that's second in the country in February, behind only Kentucky of 321,300 total checks in February and 294,377 rechecks. The third highest state for February rechecks was Utah at 50,486. And if you look further into the FBI statistics, and again, you can follow these numbers and see them for yourself, for all of 2023, the FBI showed Illinois had 3.9 million background checks. 3.9 million background checks in just 1 year's time. That surpassed all other states in the country for all of 2023. That's more than any other state and 300,000 more than Kentucky's 3.6 million total checks. So again, you're talking nearly 4 million background checks for firearms that were conducted on Illinoisans. Now, essentially, the takeaway there is Illinoisans are the most background checked people in the country. And if you didn't know, the background checks that are done, especially for FOID card holders and CCL holders, they do revolving regular checks on all of those individuals throughout the year. So that's more than likely what's adding to the total number of firearm background checks, NCIS checks, through the Federal Bureau of Investigations. So again, follow that story link on my X page about background checks for FOID card holders, and you can click through and actually see these documents yourself from the Federal Bureau of Investigations that spells out just how much you're background checked in the state of Illinois. Again, nearly 4 million total firearm background checks in the state of Illinois just for 2023. So fascinating stuff there, and I figured I would get that out to you, especially as you've seen now more FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. But the state of Illinois also surpasses the rest of the country when it comes to background checks. Pretty fascinating stuff. All right, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning for segments as we hang out live. And if you're not live, you're missing out on the chat. Bunch of people in the chat room on YouTube: Jorge, Keith, Warbot, Boston Tea Party, Randall, Oscar Mike, Festus, Kick and Wing, Warsaw, Tenebris, Randall, Oscar. I think I'm going through some of these again, but you guys are definitely active in that chat room. Patrick, appreciate you. Greg, Jorge, Ozzy, The Ghost, Chubby Guy Customs, Edward, appreciate you all being here and taking part in the live chat. It is Bishop on Air. Governor J.B. Pritzker says making appointments to the Illinois Prisoner Review Board is difficult because of all of the politics around it. Well, Republicans saying that it's the governor's handling of the Prisoner Review Board that's making controversy. Welcome back. Bishop on Air with you again. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And check out my X page. Just search Bishop on Air, and you can stay connected with some of the stories that my team and I produce And you could see the story with the headline, Pritzker says politics around prisoner review board makes appointments difficult. This comes after the governor announced last week that 2 prisoner review board members, including the chair, were resigning. You had board members Leanne Miller and Chairman Donald Shelton resign last month after it was revealed that a recent parolee named Crossetti Brand was released after a determination by prisoner review board member Miller. And that individual is now alleged in the stabbing attack that killed 11-year-old Jaden Perkins and 33-year-old Lataria Smith. Smith was pregnant and I believe injured, but the 11-year-old died in that attack. Well, yesterday, the governor made his first public appearance since that shakeup at the Prisoner Review Board, and he shared his thoughts and also what he sees is going to be necessary in the changes that he's making.
First of all, the death of an 11-year-old boy is unbelievably tragic, and under any circumstances, and these especially. I think that the members of the PRB, as you know, are of both parties. They're nominated and approved by the Senate. And I think that as you know, the leader of the panel that made the decision to let the prisoner Brand out has resigned. I think that was probably a proper decision on her part. And I think that the chairman of the PRB, who served admirably for 11 years, also a Republican, chose to leave. I did not express any reason in particular, but I think that the changes that are necessary here are evident in the fact that the panel didn't take into consideration enough the domestic violence history of this particular prisoner, and the fact that there were reports by the victim of that person knocking on her door, being around her apartment building, etc. And so one thing that we've decided to do is to make sure that we enhance the domestic violence training that all PRB members get, including all the ones that are there now, and of course any new ones that are proposed, to make sure that this never happens again.
So the governor was then asked another follow-up question to that, essentially asking, well, you got these 2 vacancies that just came up, including the chairman. When are you going to make appointments to fill those vacancies? Here's the governor reacting to that question yesterday in Chicago.
Well, the more that people politicize the position, the less likely it is that someone would want to serve in it. And as you know, there have been people in the General Assembly, typically the opposite party, who have politicized this. So it makes it more difficult. But we have not, this has been a very short period of time. I think we're talking about 5 work days so far since the resignations, the 2. And so obviously we're contemplating that we need to make nominations to those positions, but we don't have any decisions yet.
So we will, of course, be following this because even Senate Republicans, they plan a news conference today to highlight this and to put more attention on it. I connected with one of those Senate Republicans, State Senator Jason Plummer, about this very issue and getting direct response to what the governor had to say in his first public appearance after the shakeup at the Illinois Prisoner Review Board, where, again, a criminal was let out of prison, and that criminal is now alleged to have gone and stabbed and killed an 11-year-old and a pregnant woman who's injured. And you got 2 Prisoner Review Board members who are resigning because of that, including the chairman. Here's Senator Plummer with his thoughts.
Well, once again, this governor points a finger somewhere else. The only person responsible for what's taking place at the Prisoner Review Board is J.B. Pritzker. He's pathologically incapable of accepting responsibility for almost anything, though, so I'm really not surprised.
So I asked Plummer about the governor's reaction of appointing people and saying, hey, the politics gets in the way of this. And here's Plummer's reaction.
Well, the politics need to be removed from the process. The real simple answer is the governor needs to appoint qualified people and not activists to the prisoner review board. That's the easy solution. Um, Unfortunately, this governor has strayed and done things differently than prior administrations, a Republican and Democrat. And so, I think additional safeguards need to be put in place by the legislature. And I've had legislation languishing in the Senate for an extended period of time on this, as have other senators. And I think you're going to see the Senate Republicans roll out some pretty comprehensive ideas to rein in this governor and his prisoner review board to keep the people of Illinois safe.
So again, we may hear more of those comprehensive ideas from Senate Republicans, including Senator Plummer today with the news conference they plan. But I asked yesterday, what are some of those specifics? Is it a matter of, say, for instance, having other people be able to appoint a appointee to the prisoner review board instead of just having the governor do that? Is it more adherence to the process of appointing, because the governor has a history of making an appointment, 60 days go by, and then the appointment expires, the governor withdraws that appointment and reappoints that individual. All the while, that individual is immediately working for that $90,000 taxpayer-funded salary for a prisoner review board member without getting that official confirmation from the Illinois Senate. So what specifically are Republicans going to be looking to do about the prisoner review board situation? Again, here's Senator Jason Plummer.
The prisoner review board has worked pretty decently for decades. It wasn't until J.B. Pritzker became governor that things became dangerous. So I don't think it's necessarily taking anything away from the office of the governor. I think it's holding a spotlight to this governor and making sure he follows the rules. He has done everything he can to manipulate the statutory process by which these appointments are supposed to be made. And that has left unqualified and dangerous people making reckless decisions for months and in some instances years at a time without being confirmed by the Senate. So I don't think we have to take things away from the governor, but unfortunately, because of this governor's unwillingness to follow the rules, we're going to probably have to put tougher rules in place to make sure that the nominees to this board are qualified and competent, and also that the procedures that our predecessors put in place as checks and balances are more closely followed.
And in talking about more closely following those checks and balances that Plummer talked about there, again, the governor has been appointing members to the prisoner review board. The Senate doesn't take it up within 60 Senate session days. The governor withdraws that and then reappoints them. And how are they going to attack that situation to adhere more to that process? Again, Republican State Senator Jason Plummer.
Well, I mean, this had nothing to do with COVID. I'm the Republican spokesman on executive appointments, and I would literally sit in committee and watch dozens and dozens of appointees to different boards and commissions come right through committee, get confirmed, and everything worked pretty flawlessly, except the prisoner review board people. This wasn't something that we saw across other agencies and departments and boards. This was strictly a prisoner review board issue. And the governor says, "Well, I appoint and the Senate confirms." No, that's not how it's been working with Governor Pritzker. The way it's been working with Governor Pritzker is he appoints, people immediately start serving. He waits till a day or two before their 60-day deadline. He withdraws the appointment. He waits a few more days, and then he reappoints them, and he starts the clock over again. And he plays this game over and over and over again with multiple appointees. Suddenly, you have a prisoner review board full of people who haven't been confirmed by the Senate, whose well-paid position is 100% controlled by the governor. He can reappoint them or not reappoint them. I think that speaks to why we've seen such a dramatic shift in voting patterns at the PRB, because the governor has intentionally manipulated the process so that these people are answerable to only him.
So again, I imagine you'll hear a lot more from Senate Republicans on this issue, not just today, but also throughout the remainder of legislative session, which ends May 31st, though they have an adjournment date several days ahead of that. They do have the rest of the month of May spelled out for contingent days because they got to get a budget together. So the House comes back today. The Senate's off this week. They come back next week, but it is a mad dash to the final few weeks of session at the Illinois State House. So we'll, of course, review what happens today when we join together tomorrow here with Bishop on Air. Greatly appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Find out how you can get a hold of me. Just visit bishoponair.com. A lot going on up in Chicago and Cook County with the outcome of the Democratic primary for Cook County State's Attorney being decided. Now we see the race shaping up in November between a Democrat, a Republican, and possibly even a Libertarian candidate or whoever else gets on the primary ballot there. So a lot of focus there, but also crime in the city of Chicago. But Chicago not necessarily dealing directly with that. There's also been a lot of focus on the issue of Chicago Alderman Byron Joe Lopez and some images of him protesting outside of the Chicago City Hall in front of a banner from a revolutionary group called Behind Enemy Lines, standing behind the ashes of a burnt American flag. So there was some focus on that yesterday as well. But I connected with William Kelly, a reporter out of Chicago, to talk about some of the latest out of Cook County. And of course, topping a lot of the headlines has been the focus of the Cook County Democrats primary for state's attorney. And Kelly was one of those who was pretty dogged in making sure that there was some accountability on these votes that were being discovered. And here's some of that conversation I had with William Kelly this morning.
Even without an official Chicago media credential, I went down to the City Board of Elections to ask their PR guy, Max Beaver, about the 10,000 mysterious ballots that he found and why is a PR guy even finding or handling ballots at all. And this seemed to set off a firestorm, as you might imagine, on social media, and it resulted in people finding previous social media posts from Max Beaver, extreme anti-law enforcement, defund the police kind of stuff, prosecute the police kind of stuff, and a lot of people are saying that it was because of this interview with Max Beaver that somehow the City Board of Elections just threw up their hands and certified the election, the Cook County State's Attorney's election, in favor of Burke, O'Neill Burke. So this, rightly or wrongly, I'll take the credit, but it's important to understand that, first of all, there's still a general election that has to take place. She has a Republican general election opponent, Bob Fioretti, and then of course she doesn't even obviously start or whoever the new Cook County State's Attorney is won't start until 2025. So we're still with Kim Foxx in Cook County. This weekend was shockingly violent for an Easter weekend. 40 shots, 7 fatalities. And then the other kind of, I guess you could almost sadly say, ancillary violence, such as hit and runs. A Chicago public school teacher, 56-year-old man, was hit and killed by a hit and run driver on the south side. That certainly hits close to home for me as, someone who was born and raised on the South Side. Both my parents were CPS employees. We often talk about the thin blue line. I kind of feel like, there are a lot of CPS teachers who are part of that thin, very, very thin line of civilization, trying to keep kids in school, trying to teach them how to read and write and become productive members of society, it hurts a lot to hear about this man being struck and killed and left to die on the street on the south side, Greg.
So clearly there's a lot of troubling headlines out of Chicago, especially as it starts to get warmer, and how the city handles that situation. But yesterday, the city of Chicago held meetings, and there was a lot of focus on what a sitting Chicago alderman had to say and his actions in front of a banner for Behind Enemy Lines, which is a revolutionary group who's actually apparently called for civil unrest around the DNC. And apparently one message they put out said something to the effect of, make police baton bruises the fashion statement for back to school, which is an interesting thing to say. But Chicago Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez standing in front of this banner of this group, but standing behind a burnt American flag. And you had members of the Chicago city government take Sigcho Lopez to task. In particular, you've got Bill Conway giving a bit of a criticism to Sigcho Lopez.
I actually will say I believe Alderman Sigcho Lopez to be a good and decent person. But in looking at the pictures, it strains credulity that he didn't know that the charred remains of our flag were at his feet. And this all happened right outside our front door here. But the scarier part seems to be that he did it at the invitation of an organization whose goal is to create chaos and incite violence at the forthcoming Democratic Convention.
So, again, the criticism is not just that he stood in front of a burnt flag, but he was also standing alongside this revolutionary group. Governor Pritzker was asked about this yesterday in Chicago.
Look, I'm not the one who will ultimately make the decision about that. What I can say is that calling the president names, saying that we shouldn't have the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, attacking or at least standing in front of a burned American flag and in front of a sign, essentially referring to people as if they're in favor of genocide, who clearly are not, I think are all things that I disagree with. But I will defend to the death his right to say those things. I wouldn't have done it, and I wouldn't encourage anybody to do it, but it's his right to do it.
But some of the critics say, yeah, he has a free speech right, but he doesn't have a right to be part of Chicago city leadership and part of Mayor Brandon Johnson's leadership team. Interesting to see all of that, and William Kelly, reporter, seeing that while also reading the headlines of the continued violence in Chicago, and it's just hard, that cognitive dissonance as to what the focus is in the city of Chicago. Is it on, protest speech, or is it on cleaning up the streets?
We are, again, as a lifelong Chicagoan, it breaks my heart to see that Chicago City Council, what I used to consider to be the center of the political universe, more important than Washington, D.C., or, kind of a modern-day Acropolis or Roman Forum or something like this, has now essentially become some kind of a shouting match between communists and extreme left Democrats and moderate Democrats, or not a lot of actual productive work is getting done. I just find it, again, kind of personally ironic or insulting that Mayor Johnson is coming out supporting this alderman in this flag burning incident because of his belief in freedom of speech. But yet he doesn't support my freedom of speech. I've asked him to reinstate my my media credentials so I could actually attend City Hall press conferences and ask questions on the inside of the building instead of on the outside of the building. But apparently Mayor Johnson believes in burning flags as freedom of speech, but he doesn't believe in reporters asking questions as freedom of speech, Greg.
Again, thanks to William Kelly for joining me to talk about the city of Chicago and what's been going on there. But let's hear a little bit of what Chicago Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez had to say yesterday in front of the city council, defending his position.
Or continue to pander and to put the lives of people at risk. That's what I'm very grateful for Alderman Taliaferro, who met with me in good faith over the weekend. Actually, and that's what I bring it up. On Easter Sunday, we met and we discussed how this pressure may have been presented and may feel some people. I hope now that you have heard from veterans directly. Veterans who also need housing, veterans who need mental health care, veterans that need your attention.
And it goes on from there. Surely, if you want to watch the entirety of his 10-minute speech, you can do that. It doesn't necessarily address the revolutionary group, so to speak, but still rather fascinating. All right, it's Bishop on Air. Thank you so much for hanging out and joining me each and every weekday morning here from my home studio where I broadcast to give you guys this on my own personal time. So greatly appreciate it. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and be sure to follow me on X, where you can stay up to date with some of the latest headlines that we produce for thecentersquare.com. All right, guys, I got to get out of here. Busy day at the State House. The Illinois House is in session. They've got committees and a whole host of things, so we'll be tracking that for you. And be sure, again, to follow thecentersquare.com/Illinois for the latest and some of the headlines you're not really going to see anywhere else. All right, take care. Greatly appreciate you guys. Some shout-outs to those in the chat room this late in the game. Randall, Phil, Patrick, Warbot. You got Nakuda, Phil, Festus, Titus, JL, Tenebris, Warsaw. There it is. It goes frozen. And then we're back. All right. It's a good thing I made it all the way through without those hiccups. All right, guys. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Put it